Sounds better. So I'll start again. Good evening and welcome to the Faculty of Engineering webinar series at the University of Sydney. My name's Millie Norton-Knight and I'm the Recruitment Manager for the Faculty of Engineering. We are also very lucky tonight to have two highly esteemed colleagues with us. To my right, I have Associate Professor Javed Atai. He's also the Associate Dean of Research Education, and Javed sits within our School of Electrical and Information Engineering. Alongside him, I have Dr. Sean O'Reilly. Sean is the Recruitment Manager for Postgraduate Research. So how tonight will work is we will start off with a couple of presentations by Javed and Sean. Then we will open the floor to some discussion, and that's where your questions will come into play. So please do use this opportunity to ask any of us a question about studying research in the Faculty of Engineering here at the University of Sydney. It's a really good opportunity to talk to the knowledgeable staff members such as Javed and Sean about how to get in, maybe what to study, where to even begin if you want to do research at the University of Sydney, because it can be a very overwhelming kind of topic and concept to get your head around, especially sometimes at any universities. So I just want to point out there, I think there's two different Q&A functions. So if you use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and the questions will pop up, and please feel free to ask questions throughout the whole presentation, and we will do our best to answer those questions after the presentation. I will now pass on to Javed.
Thank you very much, Millie. Good evening, everybody. My name is Javed Atai. I'm the Associate Dean for Research Education. In my portfolio, I deal with all the matters related to the postgraduate research students, those students who want to do Master of Philosophy and Doctor of Philosophy from the moment that they enroll till the moment that they graduate. So I thought to give you some general information about our faculty and our standing, the standing of our university. First of all, the University of Sydney is a truly global university in every sense of the word. It is a university that is highly international in the sense that we have a large number of international students, and also it is one of those universities that ranks in the top 50 in the world. So let's have a look at some of our research in the Faculty of Engineering and IT. Again, some words about our ranking. We're the first in Australia in research innovation. Over the past 160 years, we have excelled in teaching and research, and we have cultivated a culture of firsts. We want to ensure that our academics and students achieve the best of their abilities, and they can be leaders in the field. We have many connections with industry. There's a significant amount of collaborative interaction between industry and our university. And also we have many contacts with major universities around the world. So in terms of the ranking of the university, the Faculty of Engineering and IT, we are number 56th in the world. There is a significant amount of investment in research in our faculty because of the fact that engineering deals with many important issues that are really going to transform society. So the amount of investment is going to triple by 2020. And in terms of the ranking of our research, almost all of our research has been rated as well above the world standard. And we have more than 90 research institutes where academics and research students conduct world-leading research. As far as the funding is concerned, the amount of funding has been around $500 million for research. The ranking of various department schools within our faculty are shown in this slide. You can see that in civil and structural engineering, we're number 2. In computer science, we're number 3 in Australia, and in mechanical engineering, we are number 2. Recently, there was last year, there was an analysis of the research performance of all universities in Australia by the Australian government, and this independent body found that the Faculty of Engineering, and in fact most of the research in the University of Sydney, is well above the world standard, and this is known as the Excellence in Research Australia ranking. So some of the major research contributions are, for example, in renewable energy, for example, developing and revolutionizing batteries. Zinc air batteries, for example, is one of them. In the area of cybersecurity, we have red belly blockchain technology, which is being used nowadays by major corporations such as Visa and MasterCard. As we have surgical glue, which is a life-saving invention that dries in almost a minute and can be used in hospitals and war zones, etc. And also there is significant of research in agriculture. We have world's first cattle station custom robot, and this has been actually been reported in the New York Times. One of the centers that we have is known as Australian Centre for Field Robotics. It's world famous. Its research focuses on developing autonomous and intelligent robots that can be used in all kinds of environments. Researchers in this particular center, they have developed robots that can be used in agriculture, and they have also they have developed techniques for transport, so that we can develop vehicles that are almost autonomous in every sense of the word. There is a center at the University of Sydney known as Charles Perkins Center. This center is a multidisciplinary center. It brings together engineering, medicine, science, architecture, philosophy, and arts, and the research is, as I said, is multidisciplinary. So the goal of this center is to tackle difficult and hard problems, such as finding a solution for diabetes or cardiovascular disease or obesity. There is, for example, a Baby 1000 study that explores how interactions and before and during pregnancy contribute to the development of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and obesity. We have Center for Wind, Waves, and Water. This is a center where they are trying to develop collaboration between academia and industry, and the goal here is to improve the energy efficiency, improve water quality, water resource management, wind engineering, and environmental modeling. And of course, given the fact that climate change is such an important topic in the world everywhere, I mean, this is an area that many students would want to be in. We have a newly developed an instituted center called Institute of Biomedical Engineering and Technology. The focus of this particular center is to bring together the expertise in engineering and medicine in one area, so that we can develop techniques and methods to solve important problems related to medicine, develop new medical devices and instrumentation, develop techniques for telemedicine and networking, biomaterials, tissue engineering, etc. Once again, these are really hot topics in research. Another area of focus is UBTech Sydney. This is an artificial intelligence center. Many of us have heard about artificial intelligence. It's becoming really very important in every aspect of our lives. Some of our researchers in this center are focusing on using the artificial intelligence technique to detect cyberbullying, for example, on social networks. So again, the focus of this center is to create technologies that enrich and transform our lives. They focus on psychology, education, human-computer interaction, and engineering and data mining. We have a Center of Excellence in Advanced Food and Genomics. Now, this center has been funded by the Australian Research Council. They do a significant amount of research on food and the properties of food, and how, for example, how one can improve the quality of the food, or how we can actually extract from certain plants the necessary elements that can, for example, cure certain types of diseases. So, for example, flu medication from elderberries is one of those types of research, or nutrient-rich mushroom is another one. This is for sports drinks, etc. So we have in this slide, as you can see, indicated some of the areas that they're working in. So once again, this is a very interesting and important area. And another center that has recently been initiated is the Center for Internet of Things and Telecommunications. Again, Internet of Things is one of those buzzwords that we have all heard about. The goal in many countries is that in the next 2 to 5 years, many of the devices that we have, they will be connected through a single internet. That means, for example, your mobile phone, your laptop, the power, the power station, etc. will all be connected through internet, and you can control, for example, your refrigerator from a distance, or, for example, a surgeon will be able to perform surgery from a remote location. Again, there are a number of aspects to this particular area of research. One one aspect is the wireless communication, and the other one is optical communication, which is my research. We have quite a number of world-renowned people in our university that are working in this area, and we have received enormous amount of funding in this area. So that concludes my presentation. Now I pass on to Dr. Sean O'Reilly, who will be talking about various aspects of application process.
Thank you very much, Javed, and good evening, everybody. I hope that some of the cutting-edge research that is happening in our Faculty of Engineering and IT has got you excited about the possibility of undertaking a research degree here at the University of Sydney. As Javed has said, my name is Sean O'Reilly and I'm the recruitment manager for postgraduate research here at the university. So my role really is to support our faculties to attract really the very, very best prospective research students to the university, but also, and maybe it might be even fair to say, more importantly, to support prospective students in understanding how it is you actually become a research student here at the University of Sydney. Because as Millie said at the top of the session, I think that can be sometimes a complicated process and one that many prospective students are not necessarily sure of and maybe haven't had experience of in the past. So what I would like to do really is just talk you through a couple of slides that will give you an idea of some of the steps involved in making an application to the University of Sydney. I would also like to give you a couple of pointers in terms of things to think about and consider when making that application, and really some of the important points that you need to bear in mind when making that application, because there are particular steps in the process where it is very important for you to ensure that you are showcasing not only yourself but also your research project and some of your ideas in the best possible light. And that's certainly something to be aware of. So I think the first step really in assessing and considering joining the university as a research student is to consider what kind of degree you'd like to undertake with us. As Javed has mentioned, in the Faculty of Engineering and IT, we have two primary vehicles, I suppose, for you to undertake a research degree with us. The first is our Master of Philosophy degree, or our MPhil. Usually lasts for between 1.5 and 2 years for a full-time student. And we really do want you to undertake research to quite an advanced level and in a particular specialised area during your MPhil. Certainly, I think for students who are considering MPhils, it's usually for those who maybe are beginning to dip their toe into some more advanced research in comparison to maybe what they have done at an undergraduate level or within a professional role, and maybe are not sure if they can commit full-time to a PhD degree or a Doctor of Philosophy degree, which obviously lasts for a little bit longer, usually 3.5 to 4 years for a full-time student. So I think that's something to bear in mind. Our PhD degree then, our Doctor of Philosophy degree, is probably our pinnacle degree at the University of Sydney. It is the highest ranked degree on the Australian framework of qualifications. It is a level 10 degree. And really within the PhD, what we are asking students to do is to make a significant and original contribution to their discipline. So we want you as a research student here at the university to create new knowledge. And that ultimately is what being a research student is all about. What is research? Well, it is the creation of new knowledge and then the dissemination of that knowledge across the university, across Australia and around the world. And that's really what we want you to be thinking about when you are considering undertaking a research degree with us. It is very important in that first step when you're choosing your degree to also think about your eligibility, because there are certain things that you need to consider to understand whether or not you are in fact eligible to commence a research degree at the University of Sydney. Within the Faculty of Engineering and IT, for our MPhil and for our PhD program, the minimum requirements that we often look for is that a student will either have a bachelor's degree with honours, so an honours year, in other words, a research-focused year where they have completed a major research project within their undergraduate curriculum, or indeed a master's by coursework. But if a student is coming to us with a master's by coursework as their most advanced degree, it's very important that within that master of coursework, there has been an opportunity for the student to undertake a major research project. So there needs to be a significant independent research project connected to that Master of Coursework degree. And that's something, again, that I think students need to bear in mind and be aware of, considering their pathways into some of our research degrees at the university. So that's important that you assess the degrees, have a look at our website, consider the eligibility requirements, and make sure that you do actually qualify for these degree programs. I think for students who have not yet completed any research as part of their academic career to date, There are some other pathways into our research programs. You can consider undertaking an honours year. And in some instances, if you are able to showcase that you have previous research experience, but as part of a professional role or in your working life, for example, that you have actually undertaken research projects within a professional role, the faculty can consider that evidence of previous research experience. But very much, and it's very important to be aware that all of our research applications are first assessed by our admissions office, but then will be assessed by our faculty on a case-by-case basis. So it's really important to understand that you need to showcase that previous research experience and show us that you are capable to undertake a research degree at the university. The second step in the process, and one that is really crucial for many students, is to ensure that you develop a strong and well thought through research idea. This is a point where I think for students you need to consider, what are the big research questions that I want to ask? What is it that I want to know at the end of my research degree that I don't know now? And how is that going to contribute to the development of the discipline and to the advancement of our knowledge in a particular area? And this is something, again, that takes time. It's not something that if you're hoping to make an application on a Monday, you should start planning your research idea on a Sunday evening. This is something that you really do need to spend time at, take a number of weeks, a couple of months to think about what your research ideas are. Read around your topic, read journals, consider what some of the academics here at the University of Sydney are currently researching. Javed has talked you through some of the major research centres that we have working at the university, and see where the overlap and the alignment between your research idea and your questions might relate to some of the work that we have ongoing here at the university. And therefore, to showcase your ideas and your research topic, we do ask you to prepare an initial research proposal. We have some really excellent guidelines on our website at the University of Sydney, so do log in there and we give you some very good guidelines on how to develop your research proposal. Thinking about those big questions, talking about the methods that you're going to use to actually engage with the research, understanding where the alignment is between your research ideas and the work that your prospective supervisor is already undertaking. What's important, I think, to remember at this point, however, is that this is very much an initial research proposal. This is something that's fluid. This is something that can change. But what you are doing here is showcasing to the university and indeed to a prospective supervisor the value of your research and the value of the topic and the ideas that you have. Once you move past that point, you will, of course, engage with your supervisor, help, I suppose, refine and redefine that research proposal and work very closely with your supervisor in finalizing what that research proposal might look like. But at step 2, and in developing your research idea, it is vital to ensure that, again, this is your calling card. This is your chance to showcase why it is that the university and indeed your supervisor should invest time and effort on you and your research project. And this allows you to really showcase all of your experience and expertise in that area. So for many students undertaking a research degree, this is a very different way of thinking in terms of making an application to a university. For many coursework programs, whether that's at an undergraduate or postgraduate level, we will tell you what the course is. We will say, this is what you will learn. These are the kinds of things that you will do throughout your degree with us. And at the end of it, we'll award you a degree if you meet the eligibility or the assessment criteria. For research students, I think that concept is flipped on its head a little bit. And you need to come to us at least with some ideas and an understanding of the kinds of areas of study and the ideas that you're going to engage with. Once you've done that, then it's up to you then to have a think about who is the right supervisor to support that program of study and to support that research project here at the University of Sydney. Again, this is not something that can be done in a couple of hours, or this is not something that you will do overnight. It takes time to find the right supervisor, and I think it is fair to say that for many students, this can be one of the most challenging parts of embarking upon a research degree. here at the University of Sydney, but also at many other universities as well. Because at this point, it's very important for you to ensure that you are engaging with a supervisor in the proper manner, adopting the proper tone, and again, showing how your research overlaps and aligns with that supervisor's research. I think at the university where we see students not successful at this point in the conversation or the application process is where they send very general or generic emails to prospective supervisors. We've seen students make inquiries when they haven't even gotten the supervisor's name right. They've put the wrong university in the email, for example. And these are the kinds of things that are automatically going to make our academic colleagues and be very wary as to whether or not you're committed to actually undertaking a research degree here. So it's very important to take your time with finding a supervisor. Some of the recommendations and the way in which you can go about doing that: get onto our website, review who is working in the Faculty of Engineering and IT, look at the various research centres, for example, that we've already referenced tonight, see what work is going on there, and assess who is it that's most likely to be the best support for you throughout your degree here at the university. It's also important to remember that we don't have experts in absolutely every field, so it is important to think about where is that overlap and where is that alignment. And certainly when you start to engage with a supervisor, whether that's via email, for example, ensure you are including enough information in that email to let them know what it is you want to do, your background, expertise and experience, so a CV and your academic transcripts are often good things to include, and of course that initial research proposal that clearly identifies why it will be valuable and important for you to work with that particular academic colleague. And because they need to understand and they need to be sure that they can support you and that indeed they have the expertise and the knowledge to help you develop your research project during your time with us here at the university. So that's a couple of points I think to bear in mind. And you really to understand that that can be a drawn out process. Very importantly, and when I meet with lots of students, they talk about, you know, I contacted a particular supervisor, either they weren't interested in my project or they didn't feel that my research aligned with theirs. What should I do now? I think it's really important to, at that point, not get disheartened. Just because one supervisor or a particular academic here at the university doesn't see an alignment with what you want to research and the work that they're doing, that does not necessarily mean that it's not there's not somebody else here working at the university who can support you and who will want to support your project and will want to work through your project. So give yourself that opportunity, read their work, read what they've published, and ensure that you see a nice and consistent overlap with their work. That said, it does not have to be exactly the same kind of work. It doesn't have to be exactly the same kind of questions that you're asking as your supervisor. In fact, it's always, I think, a good idea to come with a little bit of a nuanced idea, and that's something that's a little bit different to what your supervisor may previously have worked upon. But there does need to be some alignment. At that point, once you have secured the support of a supervisor, as I've mentioned, they'll work with you on refining your project. I think it's very fair to say that many prospective research students approach a supervisor, develop a research proposal that's completely unachievable in the course of a PhD or a Master of Philosophy. We have lots of ideas and lots of different things that we want to do, but in reality, your supervisor can be very, very helpful in helping you to really refine and focus your ideas and your attention onto particular areas that can actually be undertaken as part of the degree process. Once you have that support of a supervisor, then you can submit your application. The application process at this point, the formal application, is very straightforward. You apply for all of our research degrees directly to the university through our website. You can apply to our courses website to the particular degree that you are looking for. It will give you all of the eligibility requirements and ask you for the range of documentation that you must include. What is important there to recognize is you do need to include evidence of support from a particular supervisor. That can be simply an email or a letter from that prospective supervisor saying, yes, they are willing to support your research. Your research proposal needs to be included there, things like your academic transcripts, your CV, and indeed for international students, we do ask for 2 references as well. So that's important to make sure that you're ticking all of those boxes and submitting that application. At that point then, it is good for you to just sit back and wait, because then we will assess your application on our side. It will be assessed by our admissions office and again by the faculty to ensure that everything is aligned. And then if you are successful, we will make that offer to you and we'll give you that opportunity to enroll. So for prospective candidates, really points 1 to 4 there are the most important. 5 and 6, then it's over to us at the university to make a decision on your application. As Javed mentioned, Sydney has, I think, one of the biggest scholarship pools in Australia. We award significant numbers of scholarships year on year to both domestic and international students. And those scholarships really range from government-funded scholarships through the research training program to very high-level university scholarships, as well as school-specific and specialization-specific scholarships as well. So we have got a very detailed scholarships website that I would encourage you to go and have a look at. Ensure that you're very aware of the scholarships that we have on offer. For both the research training program scholarships and the university-wide scholarships, application to those particular scholarships is done as part of your admissions application. So you have the opportunity as part of the admissions application to tick a box simply and say, yes, I wish to be considered for these scholarships. It's important to remember that for domestic students, all domestic students who are admitted to a research degree here at the university they do receive a fee offset scholarship from the Australian government. So that means your tuition fee is covered for domestic students. They can then also apply for a stipend, and that is a competitive process. For international students, both a fee offset and indeed the stipend are both competitive processes. All of our scholarships are highly competitive here at the university, but they are based on academic merit. And we take into consideration previous academic qualifications and standards of degrees to date, other research experience. For example, if the student has already produced publications and things like this, all of this will contribute to whether or not you make yourself more competitive or less competitive for a scholarship at the university. So what I would say there, and the piece of the advice that I would give in that instance, is to ensure as part of your admissions application, ensure you are including all relevant detail and documentation that will give you the best opportunity to win a scholarship at the university. I think that's really important. I think we find in some instances students who are not successful for scholarship, they come back to us at a later date and say, oh, I have lots of other information that actually could have been relevant. For example, I have published in international journals in the past. I have produced work as part of a professional role that has focused on a number of research projects. All of these things are really very important and relevant when being considered as to whether or not you will be more or less competitive for a scholarship at the university. Once you are a research student with us here at the university, of course, we have other support schemes. Our postgraduate research support scheme, our PRSS, helps students attend conferences and so on, and undertake in some instances field work depending on faculties and so on. So there are other research funding opportunities once you are accepted and here at the university. Again, they are a competitive process and something that you need to apply for within your faculty and here at the university. But I think vitally important, what's important to know is that there are a range of scholarships available. Be aware that for some of the more faculty-specific or research-focused areas, there may be additional layers of application process that you need to consider. So do get onto the website and make sure you're aware of any closing dates and deadlines that might be relevant to particular scholarships that we offer.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Javed. So what I'm going to do now is I'll stop sharing the presentation screen and hopefully you'll be able to see us. Hello, everyone. Okay, so thank you. Yes, thank you, Javed, and thank you, Sean. Some very insightful information in both of those presentations. Very comprehensive, and I think that actually provides a very nice cross-section of research in the Faculty of Engineering, all of our different centres and how to apply if you are interested in studying research with us. So let me see what questions we have. So thank you for your questions so far. I can see them coming through. Please do keep sending them on. Okay, so I have a question from Anonymous. Does the research I do during my bachelor's degree affect the research topic for my master's? I'm studying health sciences currently, but I want to study Internet of Things and telecommunications for my research master's. Is that possible?
Okay, Internet of Things. So I guess if your background in your bachelor's has some, if you have done an engineering degree, then I'm sure, yes, you can do Internet of Things. But health sciences seems a little far from engineering. If it's just a bachelor's degree in health sciences, then the faculty may not give admission because of the fact that it does require a necessary background in engineering in order to be. Otherwise, people will not know the concepts. So the research requires enough background in engineering to be able to provide to do research so that you can contribute to that particular discipline.
There's a bit too much of a gap.
Yeah.
So would you suggest the student perhaps studies a master's in some sort of engineering program?
Yeah, I mean, if they can do maybe a master's degree where maybe biomedical engineering, because in some biomedical engineering masters you can learn engineering techniques, and through that then they can probably apply for a PhD, which then can bring in Internet of Things into it.
Perfect.
I think from the application perspective, it's probably important to say that we do need to see some crossover between what you have done previously, as Javed says, to show that you actually will be capable and able to progress into a research degree within the Faculty of Engineering and IT. That said, it does depend on what your research project was as part of your bachelor's program. And if there are parts of that project, I know we can't make a decision now based on the information we have, but if there are parts of that project where you can showcase that you will be capable of moving into a particular program, this is not just specific for engineering, but that assessment will be made on behalf of the faculty. But as Javed mentions, if it's such a diverse or at such a remove, that it's impossible to see any alignment, that's quite difficult for the faculty then to accept that application. And as you say, Millie, possibly a coursework program might be a good option, and undertake a research project as part of that. Consider even an honours degree as well. It could be a standalone honours year that might allow a student to develop that previous knowledge and experience.
So that's that was actually going to be my next question. If a student studied a bachelor's of engineering in a particular stream and obviously completed their embedded honours, could they potentially go on to study a PhD from that first undergraduate degree, which has an embedded honours in it?
So directly from
a bachelor's.
Yeah. Well, if they have a at least second class first division honours degree, then yes, in terms of the admission, they might, it depends on the supervisor as well and the school as well. But so they will assess that. They will assess, but the minimum is second class first division.
Okay, that's possible.
Possible, yeah.
Okay, another question has come through, and I think this may have been slightly answered before, but maybe we can clarify. Can my research be funded?
So there are lots of funding options. which I discussed very, very briefly, I must say, because there's an extensive range of funding options. The simple answer is yes, it can, but everyone has to go into the competitive process to find whether or not that your research will be funded. And if you can win a scholarship, either for a tuition fee scholarship, or indeed the additional element of a stipend scholarship as well, which of course is a living allowance, for example, to actually undertake the research and eat and pay rent and things like that. Also important. There can be instances, I think it's important to say, where particularly if you're working in maybe ARC Centre of Excellences, and where there may be funding that particular supervisors might have, and that might be available to support attendance at different things like conferences and so on. So the answer is yes, research can be funded at a research student level. In most instances, as with any research funding, it is a competitive process. An application process usually is involved.
And I know you mentioned all of our different scholarships in the presentation. Do students have to apply for those scholarships, or are they awarded automatically based on their application?
Well, the application has a question where it says, do you want to be considered for a scholarship? And if the student ticks yes, then that application will be considered for all the available scholarships that person may be eligible to be awarded.
Okay.
But as Sean said, scholarships generally are very competitive, so students need to be aware of the fact that we get many students, and there's a very competitive process. But this should not, of course, discourage anybody from applying.
Yes.
We just want to tell them that
be honest.
The reality of the matter is that this is the case.
Thank you. We have another question. Do we have to come up with our own research topic? Can I join someone's existing research topic? It's a good question.
It's a great question.
Well, the answer is yes. So when you,
yes, they have to come up with their own research topic, or they can join.
Both.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So when you contact the potential supervisor, there are a number of possibilities. So some students, for example, when they write to them, they just say that they give their own background, they attach a CV and transcript, and say that they're interested in doing a PhD under the supervision of that professor, for example. Now, that's one possibility. Another possibility is for a student to come up with an idea, with a proposal, and then attach that also to that email and say, here's my idea. Now, if the supervisor accepts that idea, then he will say, well, this is nice. You've done some, hard thinking, and I'm happy about this, and I encourage you to apply and put my name down as the supervisor in the application. And when you join in, basically you will build on that. So that's one possibility. Another possibility is, you join, you enroll, and then you meet with your supervisor, and the supervisor will say, these are my research projects. So he or she might give you 3 or 4 different research projects, and then the student will look at them and select one of them. And then that's how it works. So both of those possibilities do happen.
Okay, so quite flexible. A question from Louis. What if I have a research topic but I don't have all the necessary skills? For example, my topic might be quantum computing, but I don't have extensive courses or knowledge in quantum mechanics. Is that a problem?
Okay, so I assume that you have a degree that is closely related to that particular discipline. Say, for example, a physics degree or an engineering degree that has had some quantum theory in it. If you have that background, then if you join that particular project, you will learn as you go, basically. Many research projects are like that because the undergraduate programs these days cannot cover everything.
Yes.
So students have to learn during their research degree many of the concepts that are not covered in the undergraduate.
But would you say most of research students coming through our faculty are likely to have a background in what they want to do their PhD in? Like there's some link somewhere, or do some come a little bit left field and they're like, you know what, I want to learn more about this, and this is a research topic?
It's hard to quantify. But what I have seen, for example, with my students, some of the students who've done their PhDs with me, they had relatively good background in the field, even though they still had to learn quite a bit during the PhD. But some of them, they came, for example, I had a student who had a lot of background in wireless technology, but he didn't know much about optical technology, which is my field. But he joined in and he did actually a wonderful PhD. So it varies really. As long as the student has that like the necessary background, which is provided by a Bachelor of Engineering degree, then they can pick up, the techniques, the methods, and everything. They can pick up to it. And we do encourage our students to audit some of the courses that we offer as well. So if a student, if I see that one of my students, for example, will benefit from one of the units that we are, we offer in our faculty, in our school, for example, and that will be beneficial for his or her research, I'll say, go and sit in the lectures and. During those lectures, he or she will pick up some of the concepts as well, which will help the research.
The research. Sean, did you have something to add?
So maybe just on Java's point there at the end, that there are opportunities within the university for students to develop skills across different areas that maybe previously they haven't necessarily got the advanced knowledge or expertise in which they would like to have to do a better research project. And I think that's ultimately what we are always working towards. We want to prepare our students and enable them to do the best possible research they can.
Yes.
I think what Java says, though, is very important in terms of there has to be some fundamental knowledge and ability and experience in a particular field. A PhD in particular is not a time to suddenly decide I have this interest in something that I've never ever engaged with before. I've never had any formal training or any prerequisite knowledge of it. It's not the time when you're going to start doing that. But what you do need to be able to showcase in terms of the admission and application process is that you have the ability, enough of the very particular discipline-specific knowledge, or the knowledge that will be required for the project and the research project, the specific research project, but also the ability to undertake a research project, whether that's in engineering or elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that's showcased through bachelor's degrees, through your master's degree, or indeed for students who are coming back from the workforce, and which we see a lot of PhD level, particularly people who worked in industry, that they've done work and they've done research, maybe outside of academia as well. So again, it's just being able to showcase that you have the abilities and the knowledge to undertake that degree. What is important, I suppose, to say as well is that we are developing at the moment more opportunities for students to undertake coursework options as part of their PhD program. So we'll give them a much broader sweep of opportunity that's available. So if a student identifies, I need to know more, I need to be better at data analysis or statistical analysis, we will give them the opportunity to go and do some coursework in that particular area, again, to develop their ability to do a better research project.
So you're identifying their needs and then giving them the appropriate resources to...
And so it works both ways. We want a student to be able to identify as well if they feel they need to do something, if they need to improve somewhere.
Yeah.
But I think, and Java is right, it's hard to quantify this. It is important to say, I think it's important for students to recognize that a PhD, you're not going to learn to be a PhD, an engineering researcher and a PhD in engineering. There's not a formal process in that. It is part of the research project that you will develop your skills and so on. But we won't sit you down on day one and say, this is how you're a PhD researcher.
Okay. So on that note, how often, if once a student is successful in getting their application through to do research with the faculty, how often would the supervisor meet with their student?
Again, that varies quite a bit. It varies between different supervisors. So we have supervisors that meet with their students a few times a week.
Okay.
We have supervisors meet every 2 weeks, once a month, and then there are also communication by email or Skype, or if they are traveling or something.
Every partnership is different.
So it varies from person to person. But I guess the most important thing is that what we want to see is we want to see a cordial and professional relationship between the students and their supervisors, because that is really the main ingredient from my perspective to ensure that the student will develop their skills, and they will be able, if they're happy, they will be able to do develop new ideas and world leading research. So that's what we try to cultivate in our faculty, and our faculty in terms of the research climate, I must say, is one of the best. I mean, last year there was there are surveys that are completed by students who complete their degrees, and the Faculty of Engineering was rated one of the best in the university in terms of the research climate. So we have been working very hard over the past several years to improve that. And we do have also a program in the faculty called Research Induction. And in that particular event, we introduced students to a sort of an approach to ensure that that collaboration takes place early in the candidature.
Okay, that's great. So just to close on our last question, what I kind of want to talk about, once a student finishes their program, their PhD, I know there's that idea out there that people do PhDs to become academics, and because they've also got an interest in that study area. Have you heard of situations, both of you in your experience, where students actually do a PhD to get a particular job or to get into a particular industry, for example? Because I personally have heard about it through students that are wanting to do PhDs for that reason, but have you actually seen it in action?
Yes, I mean, we do. My students, for example, several of them, they are working for companies. There's a US company called Finisar, for example. Two of my students, after they graduated, they got a position in Finisar, which has a base in Sydney, and so they're working there. And another one of them is working in a very big company called Transfield. I don't heard about the name of it, but this is a very big company. It does many things in Australia. So yes, and we have students who work for ResMed, for example, which is a major company that develops medical devices, for example, for students, for example, who do biomedical engineering type of research. They are hired by those companies. Yes.
Okay, great. Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think just as Javed says, we see lots of students now progress into private companies, into industries, into industry where they've maybe developed that partnership during their PhD, for example. They've had opportunity to meet with colleagues and to network there. And I think just something to pick up on that, Millie, is that it's very important, I think, for students to recognize that the pathway into academia is certainly not the only one. And it's probably fair to say, and this is again about us being very honest with prospective students, that it's becoming more and more difficult to pursue an academic career. There are a lot more PhD graduates now than there were, and the number of jobs have not increased within academia. We see certainly a lot of students who come to us as prospective applicants now think about PhDs because they want to actually further their career. They have no intention of going into academia. They're already working, but actually want to make that next step within their professional life, for example. So we're seeing the PhD become maybe what the MBA was 5 to 10 years ago,
which is great.
Which is really, really positive. And that's relevant not just for students in business fields, but in engineering and IT and across all the disciplines that we offer here. So I think the PhD and a research degree doesn't just set you up for one path. And I know this is sometimes a bit of a cop-out answer from people who work in universities, but it opens up so many doors. And those skills that you build, critical analysis skills, analytical skills, they really can be applied across a whole range of occupations and industries as well.
Yeah. And in one way, holding a PhD in some ways can set you apart from your competition when you do go for that job, because not everyone has a PhD.
And additionally, a PhD is an international degree.
Yes.
So once you get a PhD, you can go to any country in the world and they will accept that degree. And we have, again, had students who, for example, got their PhD here at Sydney and they got a job in a company in the United States or Europe or elsewhere.
Okay, one last question. A good question has just come through. I think it's a bit of clarification around scholarships. If we could sum this up briefly. So many faculty-specific USyd scholarships online appear not to require a direct application, but are only given on the basis of merit. Are all accepted students considered for them, and how are they selected? Is the selection process similar as for the RTP scholarship?
Okay, so that's a bit of a complicated question because scholarships, they have different conditions. And so, I mean, you saw the list in one presentation that Sean had. So those scholarships, each one of them has its own sort of terms of reference, basically. But the RTP is the one that generally all students are considered. If a student is eligible for any of those other scholarships, then the student will be considered by that particular faculty that is providing that scholarship as well. But they have to recognize that not all of those scholarships have the same. So, for instance, I mean, there may be a scholarship in a certain area. So, if you don't, if your proposal or your research is not in that area, you won't be considered. So that's why I said that it's not easy to just say yay or nay for these types of questions. It depends on what the area is, etc.
Okay. Yeah. Anything to add, Sean?
No, I think that's.
Okay, well, we will have to wrap it up there. It's 7 o'clock, right on 7. So thank you all for your time tonight and joining us. We hope we answered all of your questions and gave you some insightful information. Please do, I'll get my colleague to put up our email address. If you have any further questions, please do email the engineering.outreach email address, and we will be sure to help you out. And good evening and good night. Thank you both to Jarvid and Sean.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.